What's up, everybody? I'm Aaron, and we're going to go over some games here. Tonight I'm on Utah real quick. The game's already started. I didn't get this video out in time. I'm on -4 on the road at USC. Utah is just the better team to me, and if you can give me Whittingham against Clay Helton, even on the road, I'll take that all day. I just think Utah is the better team, and I don't trust an inexperienced freshman quarterback. So starting with tomorrow's games, I'm going to go over quite a few that are top 25 that I know everybody's got their eye on. I'm going to try to make everything not from a betting perspective, but a lot of it will be just because I bet a lot of the games. So the first game that I'm looking at here is going to be Tennessee at Florida. Now, it's in the swamp. Florida's pretty good in the swamp, but they only had a 1.8 yard per carry against Miami. Miami's got a good defense, but they missed a lot of tackles in that game, and I was not impressed, especially when Felipe Franks was quarterback, and, the backup comes in, 4-star guy. He puts up a few numbers after they've kind of taken the wind out of the sails for Kentucky, but they still, they got 4 turnovers, I think, from Kentucky, and that's kind of how they were down double digits, 2.38 yards per carry against Kentucky. If you take away the 76-yard run for a touchdown. So, they struggle running the ball, and if you can't run the ball in the SEC, you're not going to do very well. I just think 14 points is a little too much. I think Vegas is looking at the public perception that Tennessee is a terrible team just because they go 5-7 every year, just because they lost to BYU in overtime. That's not that great of a loss. BYU went across country. Still got the win out there, and they lost to Georgia State. There's no excuse for that, But they out-yarded BYU in that loss by almost 100 yards. That's significant. Their defense gave up 3.6 yards per carry and had 4.9 yards per carry. So that lets you know right there that their defense is coming to play. If you can get 5 yards per carry every single game, you're going to be in the game. They come back against Chattanooga, and if they let Chattanooga hang around for a little while, then you can kind of maybe play against them, or at least just stay away from it, because you know that they did not come to play, and they're probably not going to win many games for the rest of the season. But they came out and they smashed them early, and they blew them out 45-0. As long as they don't turn the ball over, which has really been the reason why they've lost the games they've lost. If they can just hold on to the ball, maybe they've been working on it. I like Jeremy Pruitt as a coach. I think they can hold Florida to just inside the number at +14. Even if Florida wins by 2 touchdowns, you push that, and there's nothing wrong with that. I just think this is maybe a 10-point, 11-point type of win for Florida, maybe like a 31-20. 35-24, 34-24, something like that. I think we can stay inside the number here. So we're going to take Tennessee +14. The next game that I like, and this is my favorite one, this is my best bet for the weekend, Washington at BYU. Washington's laying 6.5. Wish I could have got a 6, but I got a 6.5 here. I think the number is a little low. Really no reason Washington can't cover this by a touchdown. It's at BYU, of course, but they smashed them last year. They beat them 35-7. And I don't think anybody's going to argue that BYU has bridged the gap in one season. And they really haven't shown anything to me. They're giving up 412 yards per game, 225 on the ground. If you give up 225 rushing yards plus to Washington, you're not going to compete. They played an overtime game and a double overtime game in the past 2 weeks. That's worth something. The only real issue for the Washington side is that they did lose to Cal, and Cal has literally zero offense. They're terrible on offense, but that defense is maybe top 5 or top 10 in the whole country. They're pretty lights out. But they did out-yard Cal in that loss. You had the rain delay for a couple of hours, and that kind of throws everything off. It was a 2.5-hour rain delay. They turned the ball over twice. But they, against Cal, I just don't know, even at home, if I can fault them that much. Just because of that rain delay, you come out and who knows what your mindset is after that. That can make things a bit wacky. So I'm not going to put too much into that. And another note is last year BYU had 195 total yards against Washington, and Washington had 466. I mean, we're talking a 250-plus yard difference last year. And I think Washington's better this year with Eason at quarterback. I mean, anybody is a upgrade over Browning, and that guy could never win a big game. So this number is short. This number should probably be like 9.5, 10.5. I mean, I think Washington should win this comfortably. A couple of touchdowns maybe. BYU, I just don't even see them being able to backdoor cover because I just don't think their offense is very good. And Washington is known to play good defense. So we're going to take Washington minus 6.5. That's going to be my best bet for the week. And the third one here is going to be Baylor. Baylor at Rice. So Baylor, I've got the team total over 41.5. That's going to be our play here. Baylor scored 56 points against Stephen F. Austin, FCS team. Who cares? They scored 63 last week against UTSA. How much better is Rice than UTSA? I don't think they're power rated too much better. I know they played a good game against Army the first week. They had all summer to prepare for the option. I don't put too much in that. And, they got smashed by Wake Forest. They gave up 41 against Wake Forest. And they gave up, their time of possession was 36 minutes. Wake Forest only had the ball for 23 minutes and still put up 41 points. Texas put up 48 on them last week. Rice has given up over 400 yards a game, 200 rushing. So they give up plays, they give up big plays, and if I can get a team total like this over is pretty outrageous to have 41.5, but even on the road. But Baylor has showed, Matt Rhule has showed that he will run up the score against poor teams. If he can run up the score against a bad team, he will, and they probably need it. Just for perception around the country, they're competing with Oklahoma and Texas and Oklahoma State, Iowa State, teams like that, TCU, that are getting all the attention. Nobody really even knows anything about Baylor anymore. But they got over 500 yards per game. They're doing what they should do. They're not coming out struggling against a bad team. They look good. They look in midseason form. They haven't played anybody, but this is at Rice. This is not a conference game yet. This is not a big game. And they've got 7.82 yards per play right now. That's a lot for over 500 yards a game. You're averaging almost 1 point per play. If you can get even just 50 plays, I'm sure you get 65 or more out of Baylor. But if you can get 50 plays, that's probably 42 points right there if you look at the average. So I'll take the explosive offense against a defense that is just way outclassed here. I think Baylor ought to cash this in the third quarter. Let's just hope that there's no turnovers. Let's hope that, they don't come out, just playing around and not taking it very seriously. But I think that this is just another one of those games where Baylor comes out and does what they're supposed to do and puts up a bunch of points, even if they give up a lot. So we're going to take Baylor over 41.5. And then the last game I have is Tulsa. I think Tulsa's at home against Wyoming. They're laying 3.5. It's a little more than a field goal. But, I think Wyoming is maybe not as good as people think, just because all they really know is that they beat Missouri, which that was a weird game. They're giving up over 400 yards per game on defense. They got out-yarded by 150 against Missouri. Out-yarded by 150 plus against Missouri. So that lets you know that Missouri really should have smashed them. They only had 92 pass yards the whole game. They can't throw the ball. And Missouri had 423 passing yards in that game. So that lets you know that, even that good Wyoming defense is maybe not as good. They play pretty well against the run, but Tulsa has shown already this season they can't run the ball. They don't want to run the ball. And with Zach Smith transferring from Baylor to Tulsa, they at least have a gunslinger back there, so there's some potential. Tulsa hung in there sort of against Michigan State. They held Michigan State to 2.7 yards per carry. And there was one point where in 2 possessions, minus 4 yards over 2 possessions for Michigan State, and they only scored 6 points out of those 2. So that lets you know that Michigan State had the field position and still couldn't really put a lot of points up. I like Tulsa's fight. They're going to be at home here. And against Oklahoma State last week, they got smashed. They lost 40-21, but they were up 21-20 at the half. So they didn't score in the second half, but they had 2 turnover on downs, and even down 12 against Oklahoma State late. They were still in the game. They were still fighting. If you can put any points on the board, that might be a game down to the wire. So I like the fight of this team. They can't run the ball. That kind of scares me here. That'd be really my only reason not to play it. But I'm hearing good enough information on Tulsa here. I mean, Wyoming played Idaho last week and beat them 21-16. That's a bad FCS team. And since they moved down from the FBS a couple of years ago, Penn State beat them like 79-0 earlier, and yet Wyoming can only beat them 21-16. And then the week before that, they beat Texas State 23-14. I mean, they're just not getting separation against even some of the worst teams. So now they got to go on the road and play Tulsa, and they were +3 in turnovers against Missouri anyway. That was just a weird game. They got them at home. Maybe the altitude got to Missouri and they wore down or something. So we're going to take Tulsa -3.5 at home against Wyoming. All right, so that's most of what I'm going to be on single-wise. I also there's another game that I want to look at before we kind of just go into some top 25 action. I'm going to give out, what I expect out of the games, just some of the random ones. I kind of like Buffalo +14 against Temple. Anybody that was betting that's betting Temple on the road at Buffalo this week, laying double digits, is probably somebody that was on Maryland last week in the same exact situation. And I see people on Temple this week. Maybe they win and cover, maybe. But this is the same situation that they lost their money on last week. Maryland comes off a top 25 victory where they just stomped Syracuse at home. And now you got to go on the road, and you got to play Temple. Nobody knows anything about Temple, but they still want to bet Maryland. You can't look at what happened last week. You got to look at the situation. You get that big emotional win. These are younger guys. The human element comes into play. Now you got to go on the road and play Temple. And Temple hung in there with them and had the lead, covered easily. And, Maryland had their chances to cover that game. So I don't think Temple maybe is as good as they looked last week. After a top 25 win at home like that, now Temple has to go on the road and play Buffalo. Buffalo's not good. They got smashed by Liberty last week, but now they get to come back home and they get to play one of the best teams that is, besides Penn State, that's on their schedule. They hung in there with Penn State in the first half. So I think +14, I think that's a pretty good bet. I haven't gotten there yet, but, I might put that one in. Let's see. Michigan +3.5. I know everybody thinks that Wisconsin's so great right now just because of the lopsided scores, but USF is terrible at run defense. If you can play run defense, you're going to smash USF. Their offense is not very good. Blake Barnett's not very good. He's done nothing. And Wisconsin just jumped on them early, and they never looked back. So they come back the next week and they smash Central Michigan. I don't think that impresses anybody. Or maybe it does. 61-0 against Central Michigan. Who cares? Miami's probably going to stomp that team this week too. They do get Michigan at home. Lately they've beaten Michigan. Michigan's not won big games. They're like 0-13 or something as a dog under Harbaugh. But I just think that perception by the public is what's making this line -3.5 for Wisconsin. And I think that Michigan's got better players. They do. They got better players. And I'm hearing that Michigan has held back a lot in the first two games. Because, when you're playing Middle Tennessee and Army, you don't want to show anything. You can pretty much just skate along, and Harbaugh just needs to win by 1 point. He doesn't have to blow anybody out. He's already got the strength of schedule. He's already got the championship game later in the year if he makes it. That stuff's going to speak for itself. He's just trying to grind out victories until he gets to this game. He's on the road against Wisconsin, and as long as you can stop their running game, and Michigan has a good run defense, and I don't like Jack Cohn. Has anybody ever even heard of Jack Cohn? That's Wisconsin's quarterback. This guy's a backup to Hornibrook, and that guy can't even start at Florida State. So I'm not gonna be too in depth here. Michigan +3.5 on the road. They can still lose by a field goal and you cash. The summer line. I've seen Michigan like -5, -6, something like that. So really the only, if it's -6, you're getting like almost 10 points worth of value here for Michigan. Only because Wisconsin has stomped all of their competition and Michigan, just hasn't looked very good. But I'm willing to bet here that they have held back a lot of their offensive, weapons, offensive plays, for this game right here. So we'll take Michigan +3.5. And that's about it as far as what I'm going to bet. So we'll get away from the betting perspective here, and we're going to look at Utah USC again. I think they win 27-17, something like that. Low scoring game. Utah can score a little bit. They got a little bit of explosiveness when they need it. I just don't think a inexperienced quarterback at USC. I just don't see them scoring at 20 points. First one to 20 probably wins this. Alabama and Southern Miss. I gotta represent. Roll Tide. I got it at like 52-14. Southern Miss ought to be able to score a couple of touchdowns with 4 true freshmen on defense for Alabama. The over 61.5 probably does have a lot of value here. I might get to the window on that. But I think Alabama can score 50 if they want to, and they won't if they don't. LSU plays at Vanderbilt. Georgia already smashed Vanderbilt, so LSU should too. Ole Miss and Cal. Cal's got to go cross country here for a very early game. Noon game Eastern time is 9 o'clock. Cal's time. That's a very early morning game. Could be kind of a slow-paced game. Cal's going to play good defense. I think Ole Miss, they played a little better defense than what I expected coming in. So I think they edge them out. I think it's like 20-16, something like that. Cal has no offense anyway. And Auburn and A&M, that's going to be a very good game. I'm going to be definitely going to be watching that one. Auburn can win that game. I think at home A&M probably does win. I got it like 24-20 A&M. I think that that A&M is, this is an even game. I just kind of like the home team here, really. Auburn's offense has not really been explosive enough to impress. SMU and TCU, that's a pretty good game to watch. I think there might be some points here. Bichelli from Texas is now SMU's quarterback, so that might be a fun one. Maybe they can upset TCU. Oregon at Stanford. Oregon's laying over 10 points. They should be able to beat Stanford, but, Stanford's ready for Oregon. They've recruited just to beat Oregon. I think maybe they're a live dog here. Oklahoma State and Texas. Texas is supposed to win this one by a touchdown, and I think they will. OK State's covered almost every game lately, so they're going to hang in there, but this is probably a good high-scoring game to watch. Colorado, Arizona State was another one. I think Colorado could beat Arizona State. You know, they're finally ranked now. They're not used to being ranked, especially after a big top 25 win against Michigan State last week. Colorado could come in here and play spoiler. They did it to Nebraska. And I think Washington State smashes UCLA. I don't know what Chip Kelly's doing there, but he better get it going pretty quickly or he's going to be out the door. But Washington State just kind of scores however many points they want to score in a game. And then the last one is Notre Dame at Georgia. You know, this line's 2 touchdowns, and that looks really good for Notre Dame. You know, Georgia only beat them by 1 point a couple of years ago. Is there really 2 touchdowns difference now? Has Georgia really bridged the gap like that? You know, because this is a line you would see with somebody like Alabama. You know, are they really up to par? I guess we'll see. I don't really like what I see from Notre Dame. And I read a stat that said that at least against the spread, you know, the top 10 teams that play, 2 top 10 teams with a double-digit line, the double-digit favorite is the one that covers almost every time in the past, like 15 matchups or so. So that, you know, that leads me to believe that maybe, you know, Notre Dame is a fraud here and Georgia can kind of, you know, put it on them at home. They're going to run the ball very well. All right, guys, so that's the first video I've ever made. And that's pretty much every game worth talking about, plus a few against the spread here. Thank you for watching.